The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Prospero webinar. My name is Derek Krebs, so I'll be leading you this next little hour on a Prospero overview. So I'm just going to start the first couple of minutes inside PowerPoint, but the bulk of the session is going to be looking at the application. So this is one of many in our educational series on Prospero. I'll talk about that a little bit further in just a minute for some other ways to get some nice little free education and tips and tricks. So let me proceed by introducing myself and the product a little bit further. Again, my name's Derek Krebs. I'm a senior consultant with the MSX Group. And like in dog years or software years, I've been doing this for a very, very long time. Upward to 30 years, I've been a consultant, 100% devoted to financial and reporting applications like our entire MSX Group team and applications. The first 15 years approximately of my 30 years doing this, I and most of our founding members worked at FRX Software and Microsoft, and we helped deliver those flagship products to you, meaning on the reporting side, FRX and Manager Porter, and on the budgeting side, Forecaster. And historically, it used to be two separate applications, meaning sort of double your work, double the processes, and those products were not linked, which was a very painful, but even they're awesome products. But what we did is we learned from all the great things of those Microsoft era, and we brought those into Prospero. And where those products were lacking, we added tons of new features, even in this short hour. Some of you new users that might be making the transition, you'll see a bunch of cool features and functionalities. And for the last 15 years, yep, we've been devoted to releasing Prospero to the market. And this overview session, we have a nice audience today that are attending live. And for those that might be attending the recording later, the mixed bag of attendees, I see some very familiar names and companies. We might have 3 audience members. It might be those current customers using Prospero. Secondly, we have a large partner network that might be helping with your ERP that are looking to maybe sell and deploy Prospero. And third and finally, we might have some prospective people that are looking to purchase or migrate to Prospero. And then speaking of migration, one of numerous differentiators that stands Prospero and MSX Group apart from the rest is, of course, our history I talked about with those many, many years at FRX and Microsoft to bring those products to you. And we have a great report and budget conversion utility, which means, hey, all of your hard work those years of all your FRX and Manager Porter reports, we can seamlessly migrate those into Prospero versus our competition. You'd have to build all those from scratch, rebuild the wheel. So that's going to be a huge time and cost saver. And then for any of you that were using the Microsoft Forecaster application, instead of Excel Hell for the budgeting that maybe most of you might still be doing, we also have a conversion utility to bring in that budget data into Prospero as well to hit the ground running in no time. So just in a couple of days, you can be live and running with the Prospero product. And we also can talk offline about some dollars and cents, but sort of just a correlation is just for less than $200 a month, you can have a nice functional system of your reporting or budgeting. That's less than a cup of coffee per day. All right, and let me also emphasize that last bullet point on this introductory slide. Feel free to email me if you have any product questions. I'll be monitoring the question queue throughout this hour session for those that attended live, but anybody through recording or maybe afterwards, if you think of questions or requests, please jot down my email. I'll be glad to be a nice little information source for you. And if I don't have the answers, I'll be sure to get one of our team members that do. All right, as I continue, I see some of you on this phone call that might be new to the application. So I'll just talk about maybe a minute or two little overview. Yes, Prospero is a nice one software program instead of the 2 for budgeting and reporting. And it's going to do all your financial reports like income statements, balance sheets, statement of cash flows, even non-general ledger data. Also, it has the budgeting/forecasting ability that many people are coming from maybe an Excel world in doing so. And then we're going to have all the bells and whistles that you would expect from a nice BI, business intelligent reporting tool, like interactive charts and graphs, drill down to account and transaction detail. And speaking of that drill down, over these 30 years, I've worked with about 4 or 5 other competing tools, even some still to this day, but we have the best drill down I've seen in the market. That's really coming from a consultant or a bean counter utilizing this tool all the time. So do test this out, especially those people that are not current customer. Reminder of that free trial version, and also that migration utility at that very last bullet point. A few little bullet points specifically on reporting, then we'll also have a couple on budgeting, and we'll jump immediately thereafter into the application. So reporting, I spoke about, of course, your month-end reporting. It could be also quarter or year-end audit reports that you could easily produce and automate with Prospero. And then additionally, I want to emphasize that last bullet point. Prospero has its own data warehouse. So yeah, primarily you're going to have your general ledger data. And let's say we have segments of multiple company, multiple location, departments, and accounts. Yeah, that's going to be your primary reporting and budgeting off of those, what I call general ledger companies and segments or dimensions. But additionally, the data warehouse could be used for almost infinite other possibilities. So for example, a lot of KPIs, like key performance indicators and statistics, a lot of our customers will utilize, and that could run the gamut, meaning head count, units sold, prices, margins, etc. So you'll have an all-encompassing tool to avoid maybe multiple people in multiple applications doing that maybe in your current world. All right. Now, let's emphasize too, one of the most user-friendly, flexible, and powerful things about Prospero is its row, column, and tree approach to creating reports, meaning we're not an Excel add-in. I work with several this day and age. I don't like them. They're not user-friendly. I cannot interchange them. And then in case you're new to the row, column, or tree approach, for any financial report or budget template, you'll have 3 simple building blocks. 2 are required, meaning the row or line, like represented there in blue, like I might have an income statement there in blue of the different revenue expense accounts. And the second component, like the column represented there in red, might be a report or budget where I may be looking at month and year to date. And then third and finally, the last building block, which is optional but very commonly used, is our reporting tree, where you could slice and dice and roll up multi-company for consolidated reports, or slice and dice for the different location departments or your different other responsibility segments you might have in your general ledger. And then what's great is you can then take that one row there in blue, and I might use it for 20 or 30 different items, meaning it might be different reports where might be changing the different column, or it could be different budget templates. I also can utilize that same single row versus in the Excel world, which we're not, or an add-in, which we're not, that our competition is. It's very painful to inventory and update your reports, as companies very frequently do add new revenue expenses, departments, etc. So I'll even show you a lot of that automation and user friendliness here in this short hour for those new users of the application. All right, and lastly, as we wrap up, here's a couple little quick little shout outs to the budgeting side / forecasting, and it's going to have, again, all the bells and whistles you'd expect, meaning we have separate detail screens for some revenue detail, human resources, capital, line item detail, annotations, notes, instant consolidations, audit trail. Yeah, I rattled off about 8 or 9 bullet points there, and even in this short, maybe 20 minutes, I'll show you on the budgeting side, you're going to see all those features very seamlessly and easily. So that's usually the second stage of budgeting. I'll lead in with the reporting side, but heads up on that aspect. And then most people are coming, and I'll use as an analogy, Excel pain points, which I'm sure we're very familiar with, but broken links formulas. Maybe our spreadsheet guru left the company and I don't really know all the different links and methodology they have. So it's very difficult to set up, collaborate, and doesn't have all those workflow, audit trail, nor ease of consolidation or control the process. And ta-da! Lo and behold, that's where Prospero steps in. And there's just quickly the little solutions, especially for maybe those checking out the recording later. Now, speaking of the recording, I see a couple of people that joined the call a little bit later than the hour that I started this on. So quick little note is, again, my name's Derek Krebs. There's my contact information. And then everybody is currently on mute. So if you have any questions, please take advantage of the question area in the GoToWebinar control panel. And if there's questions I'm not able to field, I'll follow up with you individually, but I have a monitor. I see those here on my other screen in case any do come in. And then also for those that are not yet a current customer, the little free trial version reminder. So again, please jot my email down for those that came in a few minutes after the top of the hour. All right, now a few thoughts before we get into the application is, yep, you probably heard about this webinar on our website, like msxgroup.com I'm currently at, looking at our upcoming events of webinar. And today's session, again, is just going to be a nice little overview, looking holistically at all the budgeting reporting capabilities and some of the setup behind it. As I see some maybe even current customers on our call today, we have some new staff, so welcome. And then additionally, what I'd like to call your attention to is in the upcoming events, I was just talking about webinars, but twice a year, I want to invite you to our user forums. So twice a year in the fall and spring timeframe, we have 2 full days devoted to free, yep, free, those commercials, product training. So as an example, we had our spring forum on March 19th and 20th, 2 days. The first day was devoted to Manager, Reporter, and Forecaster, a full 8-hour, about 6 sessions of 1 hour each, and we even record those, so you can check those out on the same page, some recordings on the link down below here. And then upcoming, we'll have our secondary one during the year, our fall, come September 18th and 19th. So that's a very common question that, hey, Derek, I loved your overview today, but let's take a little further. So this might be one option to join us live in these user forums. The second is the recordings that I mentioned. Not only this session and these forums are recorded, but then third and finally, we have a very robust library of recordings, including training and user guides, not only for Prospero, but even for FRX Manager or Forecaster. So if you're lacking or ever wanting those, especially in your transition from the Microsoft era to there, email me and I'll be glad to share those with you. All right, thank you. There's my little lead in to the application, some little housekeeping and invites there. Now, speaking of Prospero, thankfully, you have a couple of options of how you want to buy it and deploy it. Speaking of purchasing Prospero, you have 2 options. A lot of times I'll correlate it to buying a car. You either can buy the software outright, meaning a one-time cost only, or you can subscribe to it. And I'd probably say most people this day and age are subscribing to it for several advantages, meaning a lower cost of entry, lower risk on that, free trial version, so there shouldn't be any risk moving to the application. And then going back to my comment about, hey, for less than $200 bucks a month, you're going to have a fully functional system, less than a cup of coffee, etc. Now, the second thought about deployment, you have options, meaning you might want to install these on your own servers. Or secondly, a lot of the Microsoft ERP users that probably the bulk of our customers are, a lot of times they might have a third party that's now hosting their Microsoft Dynamics applications. An example might be Business Central. That is only a web-hosted version of Microsoft's that we link to. They have a cruddy report writer, so that's why most use Prospero. And then also they don't have any budgeting, or at least collaborative, hence they use ours. So, and then finally, we even host a majority of our customers today. So again, it could be installed on your servers, a third party, or we can host that. So that's another common question I see about IT that came in our little queue. Now, I'm actually looking at our hosted version. So regardless if it's on your servers or hosted by a third party or us MSX group, it's going to have the exact same look and feel to it. What we wanted to do is have it be a familiar Microsoft look and feel, meaning Excel, Word, or Outlook. So as I navigate, I'm actually going to be looking at 2 different personas in your organization. One might be a manager or an end user, where I simply might view a financial report, or it might be that time of the year where you want me to do some budgeting or forecasting. And the second type of person or persona we're going to look at today is maybe a power user, like in the finance and accounting area that's in charge of the reporting and budgeting setup, and we'll look at that secondly, because right now we're going to be looking at an end user. Let's call it Bob or Sally. I've already logged into the application, maybe in the hosted web version that we have seamlessly, and even we can use single sign-on or what we call your Windows Active Directory. And that's really just IT buzzwords to really, that way you don't have to maintain separate user IDs. It's secure. We meet all the audit compliances, etc. All right, now I've logged in securely to the application, and we have what is called my user assignments. So I'm going to role play and talk about multiple companies like United States and Canadian company, which we're going to consolidate. But this user only has access to the United States company. And as I continue that phrase, I'm actually going to look at one of my two reports at month end. So let's say you are my boss in the finance and accounting area. I see about 20 people on the phone call. So let's say we're the 20 managers in the organization that you're allowing us to see financial reports, and then secondly, budgets. And then on this quick launch area, it's a nice shortcut that you provided me, and as headed, the heading called reports and charts. How about you provide all of us 2 reports every month? Here to the left, we'll call that report number 1, my actual versus budget report. Or here to the right, let's call this report number 2, a nice rolling 12-month report. I'm currently opening up this actual versus budget report. Now here is our demonstration structure that I'll now more aptly quote to you as I began. We actually have multiple company, but as I chose this pick list for companies, the user I'm currently logged into, Derek, we'll call Derek the end user, only has access to company 1, United States, but we actually have multiple company, like our Canadian and European ones. Secondly, we have location, and third, we have departments. And what you're not seeing in my pick list are the different accounts, like revenue expense. The reason why, that's normally contained within our row or line set, like for our income statement or balance sheet reports. And then secondly, let's look at location. Similar story. We have about 15 different locations in our demonstration database, but I only have access to the Denver location. Again, we call that security assignments. We easily create by the accountants where we don't need IT. We love them, but we don't need them since we're in control of the process. And I should have time today showing you security in system. Only takes me about 2 or 3 minutes for its ease of use and intuitiveness. And then finally, yes, I'm in charge of Denver, and looking at department, yeah, I'm in charge of all departments, meaning I can see them all. Now, usually what I like to do looking at a financial report, I like to look at all my departments rolled up, and there's 2 nice ways you can see your departments. This is currently a list, like you see department 400, 500, 600, or I could also look at it graphically in a tree. So here in the lower left, here's a tree called all, which is automatically created and automatically maintained. So many times we'll correlate our product to maybe the old Microsoft era, because in Microsoft FRX Manager, Porter, and Forecaster, you always had to manually create these trees. And as new company location departments got added, you had to manually update those. But a great new feature amongst 20, 30, 40 I can rattle off here in a short hour. Here's this tree again called all again, automatically created, maintained. So I'm going to look at my financial report, and I'm going to show you a second or third example on trees, maybe on location later. And then third, we're going to look at a tree on our account segment. Like I might want to roll up all my revenue accounts or expense accounts. And then expense accounts, I might want to subgroup between labor, utilities, travel, etc. All right, but here's our first tree on department I'll continue with. Now, as I quote unquote interact with this report, we're going to be looking at some toolbar icons, and usually I just go from the left to the right. We're going to talk about drill order and our powerful and easy ability to change the drill order, and probably one of the best I've seen in the market. Secondly, I'm going to come up and look at this data graphically and even drill down to this graphs for some nice little dashboarding. Next, I'm looking at all departments, but I'm going to change my report prompt to maybe look at a different location or a different department. Further to the right, maybe you've asked me as my manager, you want me to explain some variances actual to budget, so I'm going to annotate to explain maybe some variances over and under budget. And then lastly, here to the right, I'm going to maybe output or export to Excel or PDF because maybe I want to do some more ad hoc analysis with this data, or maybe there might be a coworker I want to share that with. All right, so let me go back to those 4 or 5 bullet points. Let's talk about drill down and drill order. I'm going to look at sales first of all. Notice the different columns like actual, prior year, budget, etc. And I'm going to double click anywhere on that line for sales. What happens is a tab here to the right gets opened. So I'm going to go back to the tab to the left. I'm going to call that my original report, where I'm looking at all departments. I drilled into sales, and then here to the right is my tab where I see the sales breakout by department A, sales, or department B, marketing. And then third and finally, we call that the account level. And then I can even go down one additional level, as you see this third tab to the right, what we call the transaction detail. So here's transaction 1, 2, 3. We even can display easily vendor or customer, but we've hidden that for maybe some of our own mocked up data that we have here. And I do not have to be a licensed user of your general ledger to see that data at the transaction level or with vendor or customer. I simply have to be a licensed user in Prospero, or if not, maybe you can cut cost and maybe just send users reports in Excel or PDF, which I'm going to show you here shortly as one of my last bullet points. I'm going to close out of this transaction detail. Here's my original account level detail, and I can right click and even show tabs side by side. So I'm just going to vertically show maybe the original report to the left, but then to the right, me drilling in. I drilled into sales, and it's almost implied, but I'm even going to make that bigger so we can see it a bit. Now, when I drilled into my sales line, and this is really just a pet peeve of our competition that's usually 2 or 3 times more costly than us, not only in software license cost, but also in services that usually takes 2 or 3 times longer than us to deploy or implement and train. Because when I drilled into sales, notice here, I see all of my drill down and variances here. Because in most of our costly competition, when you drill in, you might only see only actual. You have to close that out, drill in separately to prior year, drill in separately to budget. I won't even be able to see variance at all, and usually in our competition. So just want to emphasize that differentiator between us. All right, so I'm just going to close this out. I showed some windows side by side, and then I'll show you a second or third example to that, what we call report collections, meaning at month end, I might have to produce several reports at once. Now, let me actually get to one of the bullet points that might make more logical sense now. I'm going to immediately come to change the report prompt because when I drilled into sales, I looked at, let's say, department 200 or 300, but maybe I want to turn my attention looking at more granularly. Instead of looking at all departments rolled up and drilling in, I'm now going to change the report prompt. And since I have another session logged in as a power user, I have to just enter this. Normally it will remember these from the time before. And then here is in my department pick list, instead of me looking at all rolled up, which normally I begin with to look at the big picture, then drill in, now I'm going to look at more micro, looking at a single department for marketing. And lo and behold, there's maybe my header looking at all departments. And then here now I'm looking at just the marketing. I'm going to drill in. There's that same account and transaction detail with one click there. Okay, now one of my favorite features and new features that the Microsoft era did not have is our ability to change the drill order. And how I'm going to best represent that is I'm going to open up this same report, but I'm looking at a power user in the finance and accounting area. Now, one window or thought I wanted to show you before I forget is the good old row, column, or tree approach to creating reports, because I'm going to close this window. As a power user, meaning me now, I've changed roles. I'm now in the finance and accounting area. I want to look at this button called the catalog view, meaning I'm looking at all the different reports inside the system. So here you see reports 1 through whatever, maybe 50, 60 reports we have in our demonstration database that you could also leverage in your true implementation. Then here is the line set column, who last modified it, when it was last used, and published. And I'll talk about published reports a little bit further later, but that end user saw a report that I published because I just finished month end and I publish on their behalf because I'm a control freak. Maybe I don't want them to run it any day or time of the day. But you can allow users. It's up to you if you want users to run the report anytime. But sometimes our clients might say, nope, they might be what we call a limited user, and I'm going to run and publish for it, meaning I just click once, maybe one report, or better yet, click once a report collection of multiple reports, and maybe they just consume what I generate for them. But again, you have options. Now, the last little thought or two of this window is really, again, our differentiator of Prospero, standing apart from the rest. I just clicked on this heading called line set, and then here's all the reports, like in my lead-in slide, that all share that one row definition or line set. So if I need to update the structure, like, hey, maybe management wants me to add a new gross margin line, or maybe we have a new overtime account, I only update it in one spot, meaning this one line set. Versus our competition in Excel hell, you would see something like this in our competition. You might see 20 or 30 different Excel files, and a lot of times I have to open up those individually to edit them most commonly, which I hate. I love the row column tree approach to Microsoft's era and now Prospero, since those are no longer supported or developed. All right, good. I'll get off of my little soapbox, but just I wanted to emphasize that for some of our new perspective people here. Now, continuing with that drill down and keyword drill order, I'm now going to demonstrate. I'm logged in now as my CFO, who can see all companies and all departments. So that last button, I looked at just a single location, Denver, of a single company, United States, and I looked at maybe a single department. Now, as I reopen the report, you're going to see my CFO has a couple other options here. Here at the very top, company, same story we saw in department, but there's our tree automatically created and maintained. And here is where now I'm seeing a nice consolidated report of the different companies. And even these eliminations, maybe I'm storing those offline in Excel, but maybe another use of the data warehouse. I quoted earlier statistics or budgets we'll see here secondly, but maybe instead of me storing eliminations manually in Excel, I might want to store those eliminations in the Prospero data warehouse. Or maybe we acquired a new entity that's using a different general ledger system. Well, Prospero interfaces with about 40 or 50 different ERP accounting systems and versions. So the odds are we already link automatically to that new GL. But if not, we can maybe import data in from maybe another entity if we acquire it, or maybe if on a rare case we don't have an interface, but we're always building new ones every single month based on our customer requests. All right, and as promised, and maybe the last tree before we see a tree on the account segment is location. Now, for those people that are maybe currently or moving from FX and Manager Porter to Prospero, yes, the migration, we can automatically bring in those reports to repeat for a couple people that came in late. But in FX and Manager Porter, if you had 2 or 3 different trees, you would have to have 2 or 3 different reports. But in Prospero, you don't. You can have one simple report. And based on your security access, I always like to add, based on your security access is what I'll have available in this list. So I'm going to call this all tree, tree number 1. Yep, automatically created and maintained. Well, I might want to slice and dice this based on maybe geography or function, because I have some Eastern locations and some sales and service divisions. And that's basically what this tree number 2 is, or tree number 3 that I'll call it. So let's open up tree number 2 here. So there's my different sales and my different service departments. But notice here I have San Francisco. Currently, it's now not rolled up San Francisco, at least in this tree. It's by division, like sales and service. And that's why maybe I want to have a third tree based on, again, your dimensions or segments you have, and based on how simple or complex your structure is. But here's an example where here's my East, and these are individual children, like I'll call it 0, 1200, 1400. But also we can use ranges or wildcards, which means, hey, if I add a new Midwest location, another way to automate and avoid maintenance as new locations, divisions get added. And the last example on trees, I'll show you the account segment a little bit later. All right. I see a couple questions that came in the queue, and I'll definitely be talking about those in just a minute. So hang with me and I'll quote that question here when I get to it. Okay, but thank you for those that are submitting those. All right, as I continue, long story short again, the CFO I'm now logged into as has access to multiple company location departments, instant consolidation, and we'll talk about instant consolidation on the budget side as well. Now for sales, I'll use the same analogy. I'm now going to drill in, but the CFO, hierarchically, my first click or drill down is by company, like 1 US or 2 Europe. My next click and largest piece is United States. And then my second level or click are by the different locations, like Miami, San Francisco, and Denver. And then third and finally, here's Denver, because the other manager I led in with came in only looking at US and Denver, which this line sort of represents. And then here are the departments that we saw as an end user, but me now as a CFO. Now, really, this is my third click, meaning just United States, just Denver, and just the Denver departments. Now, I can see a large variance in this marketing area of 700,000. Hey, that's a problem area. Now, instead of me hunting and pecking maybe about 40 or 50 different units of my tree, meaning these different levels of location, department, and companies, I can easily do analysis without having to go to a second, third, or fourth report, which our competition or maybe your Microsoft history had to. So now the punchline is this button here called Change Drill Order. Our customers and I love it so much. Here's the default that normally I define or prefer in my report, and you can change the default. But here, first company, second click was by location, third department. As the sentence reads, I'm going to drag and drop. So how about for this example, I'm going to drag department to the top. Instead of that being my third click or analysis, I'm now going to look at the sales or even expense I might do secondly. I'm now going to drill in, and immediately I see department as the first level. And then I can continue going further. There's my next level by company, maybe my next level by location. I can come up here and show these side by side, like horizontally or vertically. Why not? I'll do that again. And let me just close this tab that I drilled into. And then usually I like to conclude where I led in with, and that's here, this button called Change the Drill Order. I just dragged and dropped department, just like I'm going to drag and drop, playing around some other segments here based on what I want first, second, or third in my drill order. All right, oohs, ahs. I saw one person say that, yep, they love that feature. So thanks for that comment that I see in the corner of my eye there in my other monitor. All right, great. Let me continue. I'm going to go back to my end user and wrap up a few little thoughts here or interactions of the report. Let's now, from the left to the right, let's look at this report graphically. We have about 9 or 10 different graph types. All you have to do is turn on a little check mark saying, yes, you want a graph, and choose from the graph type. So here's maybe one graph type of, let's say, 9 or 10 that we have out of the box, a pie graph. Otherwise, I'll show you a column, line, stacked, tiered, etc. And even this is a drill downable graph. So you see my legend here. I'm going to call this my margin analysis. I budgeted profitability of 15%. Prior was a bad year, 4.3. We'll call it COVID year. And then, hey, actual, I'm doing 6.4. Still not as great as my budget. And then I'm going to drill into one of these pie nodes here. Like here, the expenses here in red. And lo and behold, there's my next level down based on my drill order or based on the user and their security access rights. And obviously, I could have changed the drill order. I could have done the same thing as maybe this end user. But since we just saw it, I won't do that. Now, hey, graphs and charts are super cool. But even better yet is, hey, when I drilled into this graph, because here's my original graph, or the tab to the right is when I drilled in. I could keep going further, but what I'm now going to do is this toolbar icon. I'm now going to switch to the report view, meaning when I drilled into that graph, maybe I want to see that data tabularly, or in what we call the report view. All right, so once again, as the heading applies, we're looking at total expenses I drilled into, that piece of the graph. We're now looking at department based on my drill order. And then here's that data broken out across all my columns, actual, prior year, and budget. And I can go back to the chart view, just like I can go back to the report view. All right, now Let's go to the next bullet point. This is probably one of the final one or two. Then we'll get to the budgeting side, then some question and answer or some setup side. I'm going to export this little drill downable piece to Excel because this might be a little quick little analysis I'm doing for one of my managers that asked me about it, me being the financial analyst here. All right, any file name and path, I'm just going to keep the default, overwrite the file I might have done on a previous day. And lo and behold, we're going to now look at 2 or 3 examples in Excel. This is what I drilled down to, began with the graph, switched to the report view. And I'm going to call this one report, like an income statement, where I drilled down. Well, before I show you some other examples in Excel and PDF, that's the cheap, free way, I would probably say most people would have a licensed user. That way we're compliant, meaning Sarbanes-Oxley. We don't have this financial data in the wrong hands. Also, with being a licensed user in Prospero, you'll have all the other features and functionalities, meaning drill down to the transaction level, where I can add annotations and notes, change the drill order, graphing, etc. And I haven't showed you a couple of those, but still, I'm going to now show you some very cool free ways in Excel. Let's now, the second example I have of 3 in Excel is one report and an income statement. But here, look, notice the different Excel tabs or worksheets we have. Here's Miami Department A, Service. Here's Miami Department B, San Francisco Department A, San Francisco Department B. This is the financial level. We also can include account level detail in our Excel output. All right, very cool. But even cooler is, how about at month end, my banker or board member, who's maybe not a licensed user of Prospero, they want to see 3 reports. So here is one option, is in Excel. This is simply what we call a report collection, meaning multiple reports you can crank out seamlessly, and I'll show you even the setup behind it. Since this is not smoke and mirrors, this is easy by accountants for accountants. So here's report or sheet number 1 for my income statement. Here's report or sheet number 2, my balance sheet. Or here's report or sheet number 3 for my statement of cash flow. So maybe I'm a banker board member, can free, without being a licensed user, easily see that financial data. All right, and then last but not least, let's look at 2 final examples to a report collection. Now here is, we're looking at Prospero again, where I showed some tabs side by side. This again is a report collection, meaning multiple reports, where I might have 4 items here. To the left, I have 2 reports in sort of the report view or tabular view I referenced it as. And then to the right, I have maybe 2 reports shown graphically. And then I could interact and drill down to them, including the graph or export them out. We already saw it, but I'm going to show you one final tour thing. That is adding annotations. But before I forget, the last option for these report collections that I'll conclude with is in PDF. So I believe I already have open here. I'm in a browser. Here's this PDF file. Notice the suffix here, no smoke and mirrors. It's just a PDF file I'm showing in the browser. Now here might be that same report number 1. We'll call it the income statement. I'm paging down. There's the balance sheet, which it's not. It's really just different location departments, but it could be. There's my cash flow report. All right, a lot of you people are manually doing this, taking a lot of time, effort, printing, collating it, mailing it to people, but there's now a free electronic version of that report collection, meaning multiple reports in PDF. Or I'll go back one more time. There's maybe an electronic dashboard. Maybe my CFO likes to see these daily reports every morning when they log in, that report collection. And let me show you that behind the scenes, just how easy and simple that report collection is. I'm now logged in as my power user, which means here in the lower left, I have a few extra buttons, meaning that the lines, the columns, the trees, or the reports. But I'm actually going to come here to what's called report collections. I'm going to open this one called month end, because that might be one set of reports for one audience, or I might have a second or third that you see some different report collection names here. Now, in this example I'm showing you, there's 3 reports. But I can simply click on the add or remove button, and sure, I'll just play around. Now, speaking of, I'm going to add a new report. Now, here's all my reports in a nice little folder view, a new feature, especially from those people that are coming from FRX, or turning it off, and this is more just by the name. numerically in alpha order. Now I'm just going to choose a fourth report randomly, or I'll just choose a fifth and sixth one randomly here. All right, now awesome. There's maybe my report collection. Now finally, on the output tab, all it is a 1-minute tutorial. You're now a master at this. On the output tab, we saw those 4 different options here, meaning to the workspace. I'm sure you didn't forget, but there's maybe me seeing it in the workspace inside Prospero. Or secondly, I could then look at an Excel where we saw those 3 different sheets for income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow, or we saw in the PDF. And really what my end user did was they saw these reports in what we call the publish report area, which I'm going to circle back to my end user in just a moment and what they call their publish report area. And obviously I also can print these out, but most people are saving a tree in your cost, but that's a request that we brought back in because when you moved from FRX to Managed Reporter, someone I see in this phone call, Microsoft took a lot of features and functionalities away, but we brought those back in because I wish they never had when Microsoft acquired us when we were a private company back in the FRX days. All right, little history there. All right, but there is the simplicity of the report collection. Also, before I forget, I want to show you the simplicity of our report design, especially charting and graphing. Now for this report called income statement, we already saw in the home ribbon, the catalog view, we saw all the reports in the system. I sorted it by the line set being used, like all these that share this one line set called income statement, all these reports. And that's really our 2 simple building blocks, meaning the line and column. And then when I ran the report, we saw our different trees, especially like on location, we saw the 3 different trees. And lastly, just to show you a little bit behind the scenes, I'll show you a few more in the last 20 minutes, time permits. On the chart tab, the phrase was, hey, all you have to do is turn on the little check mark. That's all you have to do to allow charting. And then here's that list of about 8 or 9 different chart types. And our competition, their story is, well, you have to buy Power BI as a separate license. You have to have technical people that maintain and does that. No, that's not our story. Here's our easy solution as an accountant. And even I'm a pretty darn good Excel power user, but that's not our story either. You don't have to be an Excel master or guru to do charting and graphing. All you have to do is turn on that little check mark. And let's go back to my end user. That's what they come up here, display as a chart. Awesome. All right. There is behind the curtains, no smoke and mirrors. There's the transparency, not only this overview, little quick training, but even in our free trial version. All right, last little bullet point on interacting, and I'll show you maybe an item or 2 on the ease of setup. Then we'll jump to the budgeting side. Now, one of my last little illustrations would be me, the manager. Now I'm logged back in as, we'll call it the end user. Here to the left is the published reports, and really these folders you can archive and scheme up any way you want. Sometimes it might be date driven, like 2023 and 2024, and you might have some different months beneath it. Or sometimes it's reporter group driven, like here's my United States reports, or here's my international consolidated reports, or here's my balance sheets, here's my income statement. So again, you have complete flexibility of how you create your folders here. And these are the published reports that my end user, when I took one step back, yeah, maybe me as the accountant, when I did it month end, I just published that report collection, meaning one click, and then they just log in. Bob maybe sees Denver, Sally sees maybe a different location company. So there's the automation you didn't quite see, but if I just click generate on that report collection, that's all I need to do. And last little bullet point, leaving you a little hanging, is you've asked me to explain variances, my actual to budget. So this little blue dot, let's look at an annotation I've already added, and then I'm going to add a new one. So if I hover on top of it, I can see that memo or note, but here to the right, I can see different memos and notes, maybe by different users and different times here. What I'm now going to do on exempt salaries, yeah, I can drill in like we saw before. Yeah, we saw that 4 or 5 times, so I won't do that. But I'm going to right click and annotate. And notice the icon to the left. I'm lazy with my mouse movement, but I could move my mouse here to the top as I'm going to be including with my interaction talking about that bullet point. And I'll say something like, here's my variance here. But I'll say something like, thanks, great day for joining us. All right. Once I click OK, there's a nice little blue icon indicator. I can hover on top of it to read a note, or better yet, let's look at some detail. There's Derek logged in as manager 1 inside the demonstration database, but there's Derek on this date and time added it. And then the add button, you might have saw in that last note, maybe this is Derek's boss. And here's our game plan for that opportunity or threat here. All right, so now you can have some nice interaction and collaboration of your financial reports instead of hunting down separate emails, Word documents, etc. That's now going to be seamlessly in the Prospero system only for those people that have the correct security access to maybe this report and department or location, etc. I always like to add a footnote on. All right, cool. One little heads up, this budget is entered real time by my budget screen, but before I show that, which will probably be the last 10 minutes, I want to show you just one or two things as a power user that was one of the most painful things in the world today. Now, speaking of the most painful things today, I did not cover it, but I want to call your attention to this PowerPoint slide. So anybody that's attending this live, I'm going to be sharing the recording and also a little email with this PowerPoint. And especially for those people that are attending it through recording later, same story. I'll conclude with my contact information. But I want to call your attention to 3 slides. Here's the differentiators. I rattled off almost all of them conversationally in the first 45 minutes of our call today, but there it is. And really, I'm talking about next, one of the most painful things for anybody that's creating or editing and maintaining financial reports, like adding new departments and accounts we spoke of briefly, but we'll talk about the accounts like, hey, a new expense account or a new balance sheet account got added. So the column to the left, and especially 30 years, I helped sort of our marketing team draft this up, but in the column to the left are all of the pain points and challenges you have today, and then the column to the right, the Prospero solutions here. And then here's tab number 1 of 2 of the PowerPoint, and we have a second little one. So more for your recording, you can pause it. There's maybe slide 1 or 2, and then here's slide 2 of 2 that I'll again share for anybody that signed up, registered, or attended it live. Okay. All right. The key thing here is talking about line set maintenance. The old way, especially like FRX Manager, Reporter, and Forecaster, was 2 separate applications or maybe Excel for your budgeting, and then having to update many different reports here. But the Prospero solution is to use what we call a summary account and the expand feature. So I'll just highlight that in the next 2 or 3 minutes. You'll see how intuitive and user-friendly it is. All right, I'm now logged in as my end user. Let me just close this report collection. Now, the example I'm going to use is expenses, a very common one. This is a detailed report where I'm showing the individual expense accounts above this total row, or what we call a summary account. And then me as a power user, I have access to open up and edit the line of this report or the column. And I'm going to go to the line set. Now, first of all, we're going to be focusing on our natural account. This is the old way, like here's what I call account 1, 2, 3, 4. The old bad way is to bring in those accounts individually. The new good way is here's the expenses. Notice I'm expanding above this row or below, but usually above we show the detail. And what 0 means, it means show me every individual account. And then as I go back, yep, there's my expenses. Above this row, I'm showing the individual accounts. Now, furthermore, these summary accounts, usually I like using for my naming convention of them, I like using alphabetic accounts. So what I'm showing you is this pick list for the natural account. Yeah, we see the numerical ones. I'll scroll up above. Yeah, we're automatically reading that from your general ledger. Now, let me just cancel this out, and let me show you a third and final example to trees. And we're going to look at 2 ways to see this tree. Right now, we're in our line or row definition, and this is a read-only view of it, but then I'm going to show you behind the scenes how you create and maintain these trees. Okay, so here's our net income. Based on how you group and structure your report, I might have expenses and gross profit. Expenses might simply be the range of accounts in our demonstration database, like most, like 6,000 to 7,999. Or a second example, gross profit or cost of goods sold you see here in the background. Might be cost of goods sold. Now, speaking of cost of goods sold, I'm not expanding that, but I could. Like you see expanding above expenses 0 means all the way down, but I could have on cost of goods sold. Sure, I'll just do that here. I'm going to expand above this row, and I'm going to do one level down, because one level down, based on maybe my reporting structure, this is one level down, and I'm going to call this labor, materials, and overhead. Here's maybe my 5 range, here's maybe labor, whatever individual accounts are wildcards, and we're just showing you a few different examples. So I'll expand expenses again. So we looked at maybe 2 examples, expenses, maybe this range, or now cost of goods sold. I expanded one level down, which let me collapse, and that's one level down. So if I change my mind, meaning if I add new accounts to the general ledger, I do not have to update this tree. I do not have to update my line set, and we saw that line set was used for about 30 different reports, including maybe budget templates. So there's tying it all full circle, the ease, and reducing and almost avoiding maintenance altogether usually. And the last thing I usually conclude with is let's look behind the scenes of this tree, because we have a bunch of other cool features that our competition does not have. Under trees, under the natural account, let's look at the same net income I was focusing on. And I could have a second or third tree, because sometimes I'll get asked, hey, Derek, can you do balance sheet budgeting and reporting? Yeah. And sometimes I might have a separate tree, because maybe here's some non-cash items like depreciation or some of my bonus stock incentive that I might group differently. But here's my primary tree that maybe 95% of my reports and budgets deal with. And I'm just going to right click and expand the entire tree. Let's look at this expenses. There's that range. I could just double click to see maybe the accounts that fall within that range. Maybe it's an oddball account. Maybe I want to exclude these because maybe there's somewhere else in my report. We have great checks and balances too, because now that I'm excluding the 62, 50, and 60, if I come up here and right click to either add a range, which we always recommend, that way if you add new accounts, less maintenance, but I'm going to insert an individual account, because now looking at my 62 series, I see these accounts that are orphans, meaning we have great checks and balances. I'm going to call these orphan accounts I found in seconds, and the system prevents me from duplicates. And last but not least, this expenses, I'm going to right click on top of any of these summaries, like expenses or COGS, any of them. I'm going to want to see where I'm using that through the entire system. So when I right click and where used, yeah, this expenses, we were just looking at one line set called income statement that I'm using for 10 different reports, but hey, great. There's maybe some other report flavors that's using the same expenses. So if I change my mind, maybe not based on the range, but if I do so, I do so in one spot, meaning I don't have to touch and edit these, meaning, hey, the Excel hell, a lot of our competition, yeah, bummer, I won't have any of that audit trail visibility. And a lot of times I have to open all these individually up, which again, we're not the Excel add-in. All right, good. Get off my little soapbox there. All right, cool. There's a little bit of the setup behind the scenes. Let's now talk about budgeting. As always, time goes by pretty quick here. I'm now going to log back in as my end user. I'm going to take one step back because, hey, I led in with maybe the 2 reports that you gave me visibility to. And now, maybe it's that time of year you want me to do some budget or forecast input. The earlier phrase was, hey, this budget data I highlighted, maybe that's real-time entered and consolidated via Prospero. So now you've asked me to update my budget. You want me to do version 1 by this week. So I'm now going to come up this icon here. I'm double clicking it. Same security we saw before, meaning United States, Denver location. Now for the department, I'm going to open up maybe 2 or 3 real quickly here. How about department 100? This is expenses only. I'm going to open up 2 other ones. And really the punchline is, hey, I might have 50 of these departments. I'm going to open up 2. They share the same line set. So here's department 100, expenses only. The button here, reopen the input. This is my budget data entry screen. I'm now going to open up department 200, or let me do 300. Once again, expense department only, and I could open up 50 of these using that same template. Now, the third and final department I'm going to pull up after this second one shows expenses only, the second one. I'm now going to open up the third final one that might have a slightly different template. So maybe for all my sales departments across all my different locations, they have maybe a slightly different template. So here's where I can detail out my revenue and cost of goods sold and margins. And once this shows, you're going to see a different look and feel, a different line set or row definition for all my sales departments, which I'm now currently in. Now, a couple other things about the data warehouse. We mentioned about statistics, maybe eliminations, maybe a newly acquired entity. Now, some other things that I can budget and report budgets and actuals to are items not my general ledger. And maybe 3 examples are products like 10 motors or product 20 compressors and spare parts. That's not in my general ledger. Hey, great, I can budget and record actuals. Second example of 3, these units, sales price, whatever ID or code you want to give them. This is product 10 A units or product 10 price, like here's product 20, etc. Any code or names I might want to use. These statistics are not my general ledger. And third and finally, I'm going to show you budgeting down to the employee. That's not my general ledger. And yes, I have 4 minutes left, but within 4 minutes, I'm going to show you maybe 4 minutes of awesome features in the budget screen. Now, I personally prefer items in white. Yes, you can edit to. Maybe gray shade indicates you stay away from their locked because maybe they're calculations or maybe I, the administrator, budget those for you. I'm going to go back to my original budget screen here. And one of the largest costs of organization, after we looked at revenue and cost of goods sold briefly, is the human resources tab. This is purpose-built, and some other applications or competition, they'll probably never show you this setup behind the scenes because it's very complex. It might take you a day or 2 in some of the setup, but it only takes us maybe an hour or 2 to do this budget setup. It could be by name or position, hourly or full-time equivalents here, different pay raises, as I know I'm a little short on time, but here's Dan making $25,000, but I'm going to give him a budgeted 10% raise in period 3. And then to the right are just additional columns that are nice to have. You don't have to use them, but some of those nice to haves that most of our customers utilize is bonus by either percent or dollar, and even specific periods. If the period's blank, it would accrue it based on the different months they work. And then additionally to the right, we might have some overtime and commission fields. You don't have to use them, but you could. Overtime, commissions, and benefits. I'll even use me and MSX Group as an example. We have employees in about 10 different states. I live in California, so whenever Derek gets loaded to the system, does not matter what payroll system I'm using, maybe once a year, once a quarter, based on your budget frequency, I would import all people in. You might have in Excel a couple columns, like here's their name, how much they make, and what department, but here Derek might have California next to his name, and then maybe a singular family. Now these columns, you define the headings and you define the choices. And there's just one simple table that you define what these different rates and limits are, meaning there's no formulas whatsoever. Let me repeat that. There's no formulas whatsoever because in our competition, they might have hundreds or thousands of formulas that be sure to have them show you maybe the free trial version, which they probably won't offer. All right. Side note, but all right, back to the main tab. There's all my people rolled up. I have visibility and detail and accuracy for who, what, when. Instead of a bunch of questions, I got a bunch of answers in my process. Now here's statistics like headcount hours. The first 12 columns are budget, but here's all my actual prior year and budget. And if I come up here and edit a figure, I'm going to change randomly this one figure from 1,200. I'm going to change it to 2,000 right here. I'm just going to copy that across, and I'm going to save that. And I'm going to conclude with maybe 2 or 3 things. One is audit trail history, because here is, let me even just change that to $3,000. All right, so there's $2,000. I cleared this out the other day here, but let me change it now from 2,000 to 3,000. Copy that across. You're going to see who changed a value and when. Once again, history. There's Derek logging as manager 1 on this date and time. Change it from what dollar to what dollar. Great. I can see what cooks were in the kitchen doing what. Now, annotations, yeah, we saw in the report what I'm going to call historically. I might explain last month's variance actual budget, but on the budgeting side, this budget again, real-time read and entered here, as you're seeing me doing now. You see these little blue dots, and how about I'm going to minimize here to the left this navigation pane, and on the toolbar, I'm going to show the annotations column. And then that way, quickly, I can review who, like Bob or Sally, when, added which budget notes and at what time or what notes they added. Maybe in the marketing department. Here's advertising. That's maybe one of my largest expenses, about $250,000 a year. I can expand to see the line items of just this one account, 7350, but you see plus icons in these others. And then the toolbar, line items, I can on the fly break these accounts out, or maybe fixed ahead of time. Maybe I structure it where I want my users to enter sales price in units, where it calculates in gray, maybe those sales dollars or cost of goods sold or margins. So again, you have complete flexibility, infinite flexibility. So test me and our other coworkers on that trial version. There's really not been a budget or report I'm not being able to meet inside the system. And lastly, I'm going to wrap up with capital. This is what I'm going to call my new budgeted capital. And on this screen here, here's maybe a new truck I need. Maybe I'm in IT, new laptops, like here in April. I'm budgeting 3 laptops at $2,000 each, so my capital outlay is $6,000. And then here to the right, you see it grayed out, but there's my balance sheet account. Here's my expense account, and the life in months 36, and that's one simple table. You would just identify maybe about 5 or 6 asset types, a few different lives and months, a simple table. Once again, there's no formulas in the system. Our competition has ungodly Excel ones usually. We don't. We have a simple table. And then there's my new capital, including depreciation, and I could take you to eventually a balance sheet and cash flow, but I ran out of time. So there were 1 or 2 questions I purposely skipped over because I might need some more information behind the context of your question. So what I'll do is I'll conclude with a huge thank you for attending today, either live or via the recording. Again, my name is Derek Krebs. There's my email address, so feel free to jot it down. Open door, email at any time with any questions, requests that you have, that little free one-on-one version. And then also I'll be sending a nice little email thank you with this recording in PowerPoint. Otherwise, I'll say again, thanks and have a great rest of your day and summer ahead. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.